For most people, summer vacation is about memories and adventures. But for me, it was about survival. This is the story of the summer that changed my life forever. The summer I barely escaped with my life. It all started as an innocent idea. My two best friends, Ellie and Max, and I decided to take one last summer trip together before heading off to college. We wanted to get away from the noise and chaos of the city, spend some time outdoors, and just disconnect. Max found this rental cabin on a remote lake, way out in the middle of nowhere. The pictures looked beautiful. Crystal clear water, a cozy little cabin tucked between tall pine trees, and a private dock where we could swim and fish. It looked perfect. Too perfect. We packed the car with enough food and gear for a week and hit the road. Spirits were high, and the first couple of hours were everything we had hoped for. Blasting music, joking about how we'd probably get eaten by bears, and dreaming about lazy days by the water. But the closer we got to the cabin, the quieter it became. The roads narrowed, twisting through dense forests that blocked out the sun. Our phones lost signal, and the GPS froze on the screen. We should have turned back, but we didn't. We arrived at the cabin just as the sun was setting. It looked exactly like the photos, quaint and rustic, with a small porch and a view of the lake that stretched out like a sheet of glass. But something about it felt wrong. The air smelled strange, not fresh and piney like I expected, but damp and metallic. Max laughed, trying to shake off the tension. "It's just an old cabin," he said, slapping me on the back. "What did you expect? 5-star luxury?" Ellie forced a smile. "Yeah, it's fine. Let's unpack and make the best of it." We carried our bags inside, the floorboards creaking under our feet. The cabin was small but cozy. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with an old stone fireplace, but it felt abandoned, like someone had left in a hurry and never came back. I noticed strange symbols scratched into the wood around the windows and door frames. Max noticed me staring. "Probably just some local kids messing around," he said. "Come on, let's get a fire going." That night, we sat around the fire pit outside, roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. The air was warm, the stars were out, and for a little while, it felt like the perfect summer vacation. But then, we heard it, a snapping branch, deep in the woods. We all froze, straining to hear. Max laughed nervously. "It's probably a deer, or something." But then it happened again, closer this time. Ellie grabbed my arm. "Maybe we should go inside." I nodded, my pulse quickening. As we stood up, I glanced toward the tree line, and I swear I saw something move. A shadow, tall and thin, slipping between the trees. We hurried inside, locking the door behind us. Max tried to play it cool, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "It's fine," he said. "We're in the middle of the woods. There's bound to be animals out there." But deep down, I knew it wasn't an animal. The next morning we tried to shake off the weirdness of the night before. Max suggested we take the canoe out on the lake to clear our heads. The water was calm, the surface reflecting the sky like a mirror. For a while, it almost felt peaceful again. But then Ellie noticed something floating in the water, a dark shape just beneath the surface. At first, we thought it was a log, but as we paddled closer, it sank slowly into the depths and disappeared. Ellie's face went pale. "What was that?" Max tried to brush it off. "Probably just a fish." But we all knew it wasn't a fish. That afternoon, things got even stranger. We decided to hike the trail around the lake, thinking some fresh air would help clear our minds. But halfway through the hike, I glanced at my watch and realized 3 hours had passed. 3 hours. It felt like we'd only been walking for 20 minutes. Ellie checked her phone, but the time was the same. We stood there in the middle of the trail, confused and uneasy. Max looked around, his brow furrowed. "Let's head back." But when we turned around, the trail was gone. We finally made it back to the cabin just as the sun was setting. Exhausted and on edge, we locked the doors and windows and tried to settle in for the night. But none of us could sleep. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on the porch, slow and deliberate. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Then there was a soft knock. Knock, knock, knock. I waited, heart pounding. "Who is it?" I called out. No answer. Then the knocking came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. Max grabbed a baseball bat from the corner. "Stay behind me," he whispered, his voice trembling. He opened the door, but there was no one there. By the third night, we were ready to leave. We packed our bags and decided to head out at first light. But the cabin had other plans. Around 3 a.m., the lights started flickering. The air grew colder, and the smell of damp earth filled the room. Then, the whispers started, low and guttural, like a dozen voices speaking at once. They came from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everywhere. Ellie screamed, backing into a corner. "What do you want from us?" The whispers stopped. Then, in the silence, a single word. "Stay." We didn't wait for dawn. We grabbed our bags and ran. The forest was pitch black, branches clawing at our clothes as we stumbled through the trees. The air was thick, choking, and the ground seemed to shift beneath our feet. But we didn't stop. Not until we saw the car. We jumped in, Max fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life, and we sped down the narrow road, the cabin disappearing into the darkness behind us. We never talked about what happened. Not really. We told our parents we had cut the trip short because of bad weather. But none of us ever went camping again. Sometimes late at night, I dream about that cabin. I hear the knocking, the whispers, and I wonder, what would have happened if we had stayed? If you enjoyed this story, then the next one is even more horrifying. Spring break of 2024 was supposed to be a chance for my family to escape from everything: work, school, and the city's constant noise. We were exhausted and just needed some peace. So when my mom found a charming little cabin in the mountains, it felt like the perfect getaway. Secluded, surrounded by trees, with a breathtaking view of the mountains. It looked like paradise. But what started as a dream vacation quickly turned into something we never expected. A nightmare we couldn't escape. This is the story of how my family's spring break became the scariest week of our lives. The first 2 days were everything we could have hoped for. The cabin sat on a ridge overlooking a dense forest, with no neighbors for miles. The air smelled fresh, and there was nothing but nature all around us. My little sister Emma was in heaven, running through the fields and picking wildflowers like it was her personal fairy tale. Dad grilled on the back porch, while Mom read her favorite book, finally relaxed for the first time in months. I even managed to put down my phone and enjoy the outdoors for once. But then things started to change. At first, it was subtle. A nagging feeling that something wasn't right, like we weren't alone. I tried to ignore it. After all, it was an old cabin in the middle of nowhere. Of course, it felt a little creepy. But as the days went on, that feeling grew stronger. And then, strange things started happening. It started with Emma. On our second night, she came into my room clutching her teddy bear, her face pale. "There's a man in my closet," she whispered. I sighed, sitting up. "Emma, there's no man. It's just shadows. I'll check for you." I walked into her room, opened the closet door, and saw nothing but clothes and toys. I smiled, trying to reassure her. See? Nothing to worry about. But Emma didn't look convinced. She stood in the doorway, watching the closet with wide eyes. He only comes out at night, she said quietly. When the lights are off. I laughed nervously and tucked her back into bed, but I couldn't shake the chill that ran down my spine. The next morning, we decided to go for a hike on the trail behind the cabin. The forest was peaceful at first, with sunlight streaming through the trees and birds singing overhead. But about an hour into our walk, we found something strange. A circle of stones in the middle of a small clearing. Inside the circle were piles of bones, small ones, burned and blackened. Mom's face went pale. It's probably just an old campfire, she said, but her voice shook. Dad didn't say a word. He just turned around and started walking back to the cabin, fast. None of us argued. That afternoon, things got even weirder. We sat on the back porch, enjoying lunch and trying to shake off the morning's strangeness. Emma wandered into the woods, picking flowers like she always did. We kept an eye on her, but at some point, she disappeared behind the trees. Emma, Mom called. No answer. We searched for her, our voices echoing through the forest. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Just as we were about to call the police, Emma walked out of the woods, calm and smiling. Where were you? Mom cried, grabbing her in a tight hug. Emma just shrugged. I was playing with the man in the woods. Dad's face went pale. What man? Emma pointed toward the trees. He said I could stay with him forever. That night, a storm rolled in. The wind howled through the trees, and rain lashed against the windows. I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard it, a soft tapping on the glass. I rolled over, expecting to see a branch swaying in the wind. But it wasn't a branch. A man stood outside my window, his face pale and his eyes dark and empty. He smiled, pressing his face against the glass, his breath fogging up the window. I froze, unable to move. He raised his hand and tapped again, his eyes locked on mine. Then, just as quickly as he had appeared, he was gone. The next morning, I told my parents everything. I expected them to laugh it off, but they didn't. Mom looked at Dad, her face pale. We need to leave, she said. Now. Dad nodded, already grabbing his keys. We packed our bags as fast as we could and piled into the car. As we sped down the winding road, Emma whispered from the back seat, "He's following us." I glanced out the window and saw him, standing at the edge of the forest, watching us as we drove away. Back home, we tried to move on, but it wasn't that easy. Emma started having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming, saying the man was standing at the foot of her bed. We tried everything. Therapy, doctors, even moving to a new house, but the nightmares didn't stop. Then one night, Emma disappeared. Her bedroom window was wide open, the curtains fluttering in the breeze. The police searched for weeks but found nothing. No footprints. No clues. Just gone. A month later, I woke up to tapping on my window. My heart stopped. Slowly, I turned my head. There he was, the same man with that same crooked smile. He pressed his face against the glass and whispered, "You should have stayed with us." Thought this one was scary? Listen to the next story, which is even more terrifying. There's something special about going home for Christmas. The familiar smell of freshly baked cookies, the glow of twinkling lights, and that comforting warmth no dorm room can ever offer. That's what I was expecting when I went home last December. I hadn't been back since I started college, and I couldn't wait to see my family again. I missed everything. Mom's overcooked turkey. Dad's bad. Christmas jokes, even the garishly ugly ornaments on our tree. But what I found when I got there wasn't the home I remembered. Something had changed. Something dark. And by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. The train pulled into our small town station just after sunset. Snow was falling in thick, heavy flakes, covering everything in a blanket of white. The streets were almost deserted, except for a few stragglers rushing home to escape the cold. I walked through the quiet town, my breath clouding in the freezing air. The houses were lit up with Christmas decorations, twinkling lights, glowing Santas, plastic reindeer in the yards. It looked exactly the way I remembered it. Our house sat at the edge of town, right where the forest began. I smiled as it came into view, a 2-story home with a crooked string of lights hanging across the porch. Dad always insisted on putting up the lights himself, despite his complete lack of skill. As I climbed the steps to the front door, I felt a strange chill. Not from the cold, but something deeper, something that made the hairs on my neck stand. Up, I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. After a few seconds, the door creaked open on its own. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, stepping inside. The house smelled different, not the usual mix of pine and cinnamon, but something stale and metallic, like rust. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time, I felt truly alone. I dropped my bags by the door and walked into the living room. The Christmas tree stood in its usual spot, covered in familiar ornaments, the same ones we'd had since I was a kid. The lights blinked on and off, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Mom? Dad?" I called out again, louder this time. No answer. I wandered through the house, checking the kitchen, the dining room, and the den. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Nothing was out of place, but there was no sign of my parents. Then I noticed something strange. On the dining room table was a plate of cookies, freshly baked, still warm. Next to them were 2 mugs of hot chocolate, steam rising from their surfaces. Someone had been here just moments ago. A chill ran down my spine. I pulled out my phone and tried calling my mom. Straight to voicemail. I tried my dad's phone. Same thing. The house was too quiet. Not just quiet, silent. No hum of the refrigerator, no creak of the old floorboards, nothing. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming from upstairs. I froze, my heart racing. "Mom? Dad? Is that you?" The footsteps stopped. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, waiting for something, anything. The house seemed to hold its breath. Grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, I forced myself to climb the stairs. The old wooden steps creaked under my weight, each sound echoing through the house. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out in front of me. My parents' bedroom door was open just a crack, faint light spilling out into the hallway. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The room was empty, or so I thought. The bed was neatly made and everything looked normal. Too normal. But then, in the corner of the room, my flashlight caught something. A figure. It was crouched in the corner, its back to me, its body twisted in an unnatural position. Its head turned slightly, just enough for me to see its face. Pale and gaunt, with eyes that didn't seem human. It smiled at me, its mouth stretching, impossibly wide, teeth too sharp and too numerous. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My breath caught in my throat as my brain tried to process what I was seeing. Then, just like that, it was gone. I bolted out of the room, my pulse pounding in my ears. I needed to get out of the house. But as I reached the front door, I heard something else, a faint banging sound, coming from the basement. I froze. The basement door was ajar, swinging slightly with each bang. Part of me knew I should leave. Run. Get out of that house and never come back. But something drew me toward the basement door. I gripped the handle and slowly pulled it open. The stairs, leading down, were steep and narrow, disappearing into darkness. "Mom? Dad?" I whispered, barely able to speak. No response. Just that steady banging, coming from deep within the basement. The basement smelled worse than the rest of the house. Thick and sour, like something rotten. I followed the sound, my flashlight flickering as I made my way deeper. At the end of the basement, I found a door. It was locked, but the banging was coming from the other side. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the lock. Every instinct in my body told me to run. But I couldn't leave without knowing. I unlocked the door and swung it open. Inside was a small, dimly lit room. My parents were there, tied to chairs, their eyes wide with terror. They were alive, but barely. And standing behind them was the figure from upstairs. It grinned at me, its head cocked to one side, eyes gleaming in the darkness. "Welcome home," it whispered, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. I didn't think. I just ran. I turned and sprinted up the stairs, my heart hammering in my chest. I could hear it behind me, its footsteps heavy and fast. I burst through the front door, not bothering to close it behind me. The snowstorm had gotten worse, the wind whipping around me as I ran down the street. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest house, pounding on the door until someone answered. The police arrived minutes later, but when they searched the house, they found nothing. No sign of my parents. No sign of the figure, just an empty basement and 2 untouched mugs of hot chocolate. My parents were never found. The police said they must have left town, but I knew better. I knew what I saw. I moved back to campus and never returned to that house. But sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps outside my dorm room, and sometimes I find freshly baked cookies waiting for me. If you liked these holiday stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling tales. Have you ever experienced something strange while visiting home? Share your story in the comments below.